All right, Lee, we're back from the break.
Yeah.
And while we were on the break, you had mentioned that Mary and Joseph took the gold and sold it.
They probably did. A lot of scholars believe, well, they had to finance their trip to Egypt. So, because they're avoiding Herod, who wanted to kill all the children who may be the threatening Messiah. And so, how do they finance their trip to Egypt? Some scholars believe they took the gold that they got and fortuitously sold that so they could go off and protect themselves from the evil intentions of King Herod.
So do we know, I mean, earlier you had mentioned that, the three wise men,
Yeah.
that they made, it didn't look like that they were there the day of the birth.
Right.
And so how old, is there do you have any thoughts on how old Jesus was when they fled to Egypt?
Based on when that star first appeared, Herod said, I'm going to kill all the male children in Bethlehem up to the age of, 2, I think it was. So that gives some idea of the time frame. Now, one of the criticisms you hear from skeptics is to say, well, wait a minute. You telling me that King Herod goes in and kills all these kids under the age of 2 in Bethlehem and nobody else in history reports it? I mean, shouldn't Josephus, the historian from the first century, have said something about this? And the answer is probably not.
I mean, if a town of 500.
It's a town of 500. So how many kids under 2 would there be? Maybe a dozen or so. Mm-hmm. And it was in the middle of it was not on a major highway. It wasn't a major city. And Herod was a bloodthirsty king. He killed members of his own family. He was killing everybody. And so it wouldn't be news that he decided to kill a bunch of babies. And it took time for news to get out back then. There's no CNN. There was no Fox News, there's no satellite coverage. And so this took place in an obscure little town. And a couple of dozen kids were killed, which was, by the way, prophesied in the Old Testament as well. So this is another fulfillment of prophecy.
How?
There was a problem. I'm trying to think of the exact reference, but there was a prophet about the weeping that would take place. And the context suggests that this is referring to the murder of the children in Bethlehem. So there's so many ancient prophecies about the coming of the Messiah. So many that Jesus could not have intentionally fulfilled them. In other words, one of the prophecies is that Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem before he was put to death. Well, so what? He could choose to do that. Okay, I know it's a prophecy about that. Let me go find me a donkey and I'll ride it in. They'll think I'm the Messiah. He could have arranged, but there are things he could not have arranged. His lineage, he couldn't arrange. He couldn't have arranged that the soldiers gamble for his clothes when he was on the cross. He couldn't have arranged for a lot of things, like where he was born. Daniel even prophesied the time frame in which he was born. There are all these things that he couldn't have arranged. So there was a scholar by the name of Dr. Peter Stoner, a mathematician at a college in California. And he said, wait a minute, some of these prophecies could be mathematically quantifiable. They're quantifiable. For instance, Micah 5 verse 2 says the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. How many people have been born in Bethlehem? We can calculate that. So let's get the ones that can be calculated and run the numbers. And you know what they found? The odds of any human being coincidentally fulfilling just 48 of these ancient prophecies would be one chance in a trillion.
Wow.
It ain't going to happen. You get to numbers like that and you can confidently say, that ain't going to happen by chance. And yet, Jesus did it in fulfillment to prove he is who he claimed to be, the Messiah, the unique Son of God.
Wow.
So there's these prophecies that point to him, where he was born. That's how they knew it was going to be in Bethlehem.
How many prophecies are there?
Gosh, it depends on how you look at them. Some are more foreshadowings, a little less explicit. Some are very explicit. For instance, Isaiah 53 in the Old Testament, this Hebrew writing written hundreds of years before Jesus was born. If I were to read that to you right now and say, who does this describe? you would say, Jesus? It was written hundreds of years before he was born. It is a picture of the suffering Messiah. And it's so powerful that many Jewish people become Christians just reading this prophecy in Isaiah. I have a friend named Louis Lapides. He was a Vietnam veteran, came back from Nam, walking down the sidewalk in Hollywood, and he runs into a street preacher. Yeah, Jesus, Jesus. And I don't believe in that. I'm Jewish. I don't believe in Jesus. And he said, oh, why don't you read this? And he reads it, and he realizes this from Isaiah, the Jewish prophet Isaiah, hundreds of years in advance, this is Jesus. But you know what he said? That can't be true. The Christians must have changed it. So he called up a relative. He says, send me the original Hebrew scripture so I can compare. So he gets them, and he looks at it's the same. And he becomes not only a Christian, he becomes a pastor in Thousand Oaks, California.
And what was that? What was?
It's Isaiah 53. It's a description of the suffering Messiah, the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's absolutely flabbergasting. I don't know how anybody can read it and not conclude, oh, that's referring to Jesus.
And want to read it?
Could, if you got a Bible handy.
I got a couple hundred of them here. Give me just 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I wonder if I have it in here.
All right, here we go. Here's a King James.
Oh, King James. Okay, that's good. Hold on a second.
Is that going to work?